Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown. Hello dear listener and welcome to a Sitcom Showdown Halloween special. My name is Jeffers. Hello Steve, how are you?
Hello listeners, I'm well.
This must be our fourth or fifth perhaps Halloween special.
It's a bit of a tradition.
It's great. And shall I reveal what I've chosen even though people will know from the cover?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Go ahead and reveal away.
I've chosen an episode of The Young Ones called Nasty. So I wanted to, and I keep doing this, I've noticed, kick the trend of having an American sitcom for Halloween, which is what a sane person would do, and go with a British Halloween episode. But this is as Halloween-y as it gets, I think.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not, but whatever.
Well, the funny thing is that there's Halloween episodes in the US that really have nothing to do with Halloween either.
True.
Like the Cheers ones we watched.
Yes, which is all about pranks.
Yeah, and even the Brooklyn Nine-Nine ones are the same.
True,
so, yeah.
And of course, I'll explain more about the other one we covered as we go through. Anyway, The Young Ones, episode Nasty, it's a Series 2 episode, and it went out on the 29th of May, 1984. Oh, what a year 1984 was. It was a brilliant one. Anyway, nevertheless... for anyone who hasn't seen The Young Ones, and I fail to believe that there's anyone out there who hasn't seen The Young Ones, but in case you haven't, dear listener, it's a British sitcom. It was written by Ben Elton and Rick Mayall and Lisa Mayer, as some people pronounce it. Anyway, it was on BBC Two for 2 series. It was first shown in 1982 with Series 1, and then, of course, Series 2 in 1984. The show focused on the lives of 4 students. So The Young Ones includes, lots of slapstick gags and visual humour and, again, surreal jokes. Sometimes there's puppets involved, like SPG, who you'll hear more about. It's got heaps of guest stars and it's got musical numbers as well. So, when people hear the phrase musical numbers, perhaps they think of a musical. Rather, what it is they get the popular pop and rock acts of the day to do a song on their show as somehow crowbarred into the plot. Yes, so not in a variety show way.
It's not, the cast aren't breaking into song.
No. That's the best way of putting it, Steve. I should have just said that. Anyway, The Young Ones, according to Wikipedia, helped bring alternative comedy to British television in the 1980s and made household names of its writers and performers. I'd agree with that. It became a notable icon of 1980s British popular culture. It got a game, it got a home media release. It was the first non-music related program to appear on MTV in the States in 85.
Yep.
Whoa! And it was voted number 31 in the BBC's Best Sitcom poll in 2004.
And they did a single with Cliff Richard.
Yes. Music might come up later on, Steve. Anyway, it's time for us to go into the stars of the show and other sitcoms they've been in. I could virtually just hand this to you and see what...
It's just deja vu.
It is, because we have done this before. What episode of... do we remember what number podcast it was for the dear listener?
I don't remember which one, but it was Bambi. That was the one we covered.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, episode 9. It's just much further back than I expected.
Yeah. We didn't even have this studio set up back then. We just plonked a recorder in the middle of the lounge room. Anyhow, Steve, we're going to start with Adrian Edmondson, right, who plays Vyvyan. Now, I'm going to refer to Adrian as Aid from here on in.
Fair enough.
And Vyvyan as Viv. Now, Aid obviously was also in the sitcom Bottom that he did with Rick for 3 series. And we did cover Bottom's Halloween episode back in Sitcom Showdown number 59.
Yes.
So we've had a plug for episode 9, The Young Ones, and 59 for Bottom.
I'm anticipating a plug for Filthy Rich and Catflap coming up.
Yeah, definitely. Aid was also in a sitcom he created called Teenage Kicks. Now, this was way further down the line, and he played a dad who was an ex-rocker and all this. Now, that show honestly wasn't too bad. I did watch it all, but then again, it wasn't a keeper, so hence I'm not able to say, hey, Steve, watch this, because I didn't bother keeping any.
No, you erased that VCR.
This was long after the days of VCR, I'll have you know, young man.
I'm seeding the VCR.
Yeah, very well done. Oh, I'll take it all back. Most notably, though, Adrian Evanson Ade played the part of Eddie Catflap in the greatest sitcom of all time.
Here we go.
Filthy Rich and Catflap. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move on to Rick. Rick is one of the gems of comedy. What a guy. What a performer. Anyway, Rick, he was the main star in many other sitcoms, Steve. Not only Filthy Rich and Catflap as Richie Rich, but he was in the show Bottom as Richie. Are you seeing the pattern here, Steve? But he did play other characters not called Richie. He was in Believe Nothing as Professor Adonis Canute. And you'll probably recall, Steve, he played MP Alan Bastard in The New Statesman.
Yep.
And in more recent years, prior to his death, Rick was also a supporting role as Greg Davies' dad in Man Down.
Yeah, which you refused to watch.
Oh, which I refused to watch.
You refused to watch it.
Because, I enjoyed it initially, and then like Fawlty Towers, it got too stressful. And he just got himself into worse and worse situations. And I just thought, I can't watch this anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Now, Bottom, that him and Ade did, came in at number 45 in the 2004 Best British Sitcom poll, astonishingly. The Young Ones is number 31. I don't think Bottom deserves to come in at number 45. Do you?
Should be lower.
I think it should be closer toward the 100 end than the 1 end. Yeah. Although I do. I was about to say I do like Bottom. That could be taken the wrong way. Now, Rick dominated the screen and stole every show he was in. I've written here, which is true.
Yeah, well, certainly in his cameos in Blackadder.
Yeah.
As Flash.
Oh, man. Nigel Planer is next up, Steve-O, and of course, Nigel played Neil. He did such a good job that I was totally obsessed with that character as a kid. I've still got the Neil book and the Neil album.
Hurdy-gurdy mushroom man.
Hurdy-gurdy mushroom man. I've got it on CD and cassette. And we'll be hearing some of that later on. Because it got a re-release on CD, you see, remastered. And I went, I'll have one of those. Thank you very much. But I think of Nigel Planer as a film actor for some reason, like an actor-y actor who can convincingly do anything because he's so amazingly different, and I know you agree, as Ralph Filthy than he is as Neil.
It's quite the transformation.
Yeah, it really is. And he can do all that. He's got the skills. He's brilliant, is Nigel. Anyway, as other roles go, he played a bloke called Lou Lewis in Shine On Harvey Moon in the 1980s. And he was in a show called The Grimleys in the early 2000s as the deadbeat dad. Now, I've never seen either of those, I'm ashamed to say. But he was in Filthy Rich and Catflap, the greatest sitcom of all time, as Ralph Filthy Ralph.
Where does Filthy Rich and Catflap come on the top 100?
I don't think it's in the top 100, dude. Oh, it's not
That's
well
destroyed
regarded.
the credibility of the top 100.
It totally has. But look, here's one I was interested to find. And Nigel was the star of a 1993 sitcom called Bonjour La Classe, in which he plays a teacher named Lawrence Didcot. So he's like this is his vehicle. He's the starring dude. But was it any good? A true starring role for him, as we know from AP Bio, Steve. Teacher sitcoms do not work. So bad. Thank you. No comment on that. No comment.
I'm just letting it go.
Hey, so Christopher Ryan played Mike the Cool Person.
Yep.
He did a tremendous job. Now, he was also in the show Bottom as recurring guest star Dave Hedgehog.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah. And just like I was saying about Nigel Planer, he's an actor's actor, I feel. I think of him more as being a Doctor Who guest, because he played Kiv in the Colin Baker era, and he was a Sontaran in the new era, so he's done Old Who and New Who.
Yep.
Not many people have done that. He's done a heap of guest appearances in shows, but to my knowledge, he's never helmed his own sitcom. And even in The Young Ones, he was brought on as a replacement, which I wasn't aware of.
Oh.
Yes.
And we saw him as a guest star in our One Foot in the Grave episode.
That's true. Oh, yeah.
He was the plumber. I think. Yeah.
He really can act his socks off, that dude. Anyway, yeah, so he's not a comedian. Unlike Alexei Sayle, who is a comedian. Now, he's the fifth flatmate. Steve's shaking his head, and you'll like what I've got to say later on about Alexei in that case.
Okay.
So, yeah, Alexei Sayle In addition to appearing in The Young Ones, there's all sorts of characters like Billy Bolofsky, but in this case, Harry the Bastard. He's had his own very popular sketch shows, quite a few of them, and he did make his name prominent in British comedy. We can't deny that, but he's not had a sitcom of his very own. Now, Steve, as you'll know quite well, I still have a cassette tape of his live show in Perth, Western Australia, which I recorded on the 17th of May in 1991. I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And then when he came back a few years later with the all-new Alexei Sayle show, it was identical to the old show, because I'd been listening to that cassette.
Over and over.
Over and over, and he comes out, trots out the same crap. It's like, you've had 5 years to write some new material, you useless bastard. And I was so upset, I've held a grudge against him ever since.
Yep.
So screw you, Alexei Sayle.
I was there and I've got my own axe to grind.
Yeah, you poncy git. What axe have you got to grind, Steve?
Well, the fact that I paid twice to see the same show.
Yeah. Ah, man. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Now, we'll quickly talk about Lise Mayer. Now, she also wrote for sketch comedy like The Fast Show, but she's also written a bunch of movies. Mm-hmm. She's written for dramas like Casualty, but as far as I'm aware, Steve, she hasn't made any like major forays into sitcomery after The Young Ones, has she?
Not that I'm aware of.
But as we know, the writer Ben Elton is... Oh, man. He's also responsible for sitcoms including Filthy Rich and Cat Flap,
greatest sitcom of all time.
Blackadder's 2 to 4 and the little extra bits. The Right Way, not the greatest sitcom of all time, and Upstart Crow, which we love. Now, you and me, Steve, we're clearly fans of Ben Elton's work. And in fact, in this podcast history, we had to institute the rule no Ben for 10.
Yes.
Can you explain no Ben for 10 to the listener if they're new?
Well, we were just constantly going back to Ben Elton sitcoms.
Yeah.
So we thought, no, we've got to space this out. And then we did the whole thing again with Graham Linehan, I think.
Yes, we did. The Linehan ban.
The Linehan ban.
Yeah, and that's been put into full effect by people worldwide now.
Yeah. We were ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah. Guest stars, Steve-O. Oh, I love the Young Ones guest stars. They've always got a cracking crew of people. So we got Chris Barry from Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Ding.
We got Terry Jones from Monty Python. Halen Pace.
They're all in the same scene, those three.
It's amazing.
Terry and Halen Pace.
Yeah. And most notably, Helen Atkinson Wood, who you, Steve, would know as Mrs. Miggins from Blackadder.
Ah.
Yeah.
Do you know Helen Atkinson Wood? No, but thanks for the tip.
Yeah, I was getting there. You've got to...
Hey.
All right, now... Traditionally, around this time, we ask each other, depending on who's doing the stuff, how you first encountered the Young Ones. Now, the listener would have heard this if they listened to episode 9. Do you want to recount that particular story, Steve-O? What's your perspective on how we first came across the Young Ones as kiddies?
Well, we were little boys, and it appeared on the TV, on the ABC, and I think that's about it.
Right.
And it was a revelation, really.
It was. I remember the very first time we saw it was during whatever the British comedy television awards were, presumably the BAFTAs or a similar thing, and it was being played on ABC in Western Australia, and the nominees for best whatever it is are, and they played the clips from the various nominations, and the clip they played was on the train
the head
with Bambi, with Viv, getting his head knocked off and then going out and kicking the thing. And I just thought, we've got to get some of this action. And then eventually we did, and recorded it on a video and watched it over and over and over and over and over and over. Oh, and going back in the time machine, Steve, I did some personal research, which I'm sure the listener will not care about. But for context, we got our video in the summer of 1986, i.e., January 1986, down here.
Over in Honkers.
In Honkers, yes, very good. Now, we were, to my mind, one of the last families to get a video amongst my group of friends. However, the flip side to that story is because our dad was a dude who loved quality and probably researched it for 3 bloody years while we didn't have a video.
Yep.
When he bought one, it was the best video of all time. It was
top of the wazzer.
Oh, man, it was something like, it was definitely hi-fi, as we know, but I think it was 4-head hi-fi, had all the bells and whistles, and this was at a time...
Hitachi?
Yeah, it would have been, and it was bought overseas, And the similar models didn't come out in Australia for years after that. I mean, four-head hi-fi was unheard of. And long play and all the stuff. I'm like, oh. So we did get a screamer of a video.
Yep. It was worth waiting for.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Well, normally, Steve, when we get to this point in the podcast and we're going to go into the synopsis, as you know, we play the theme tune from the young ones, from whichever sitcom we're doing. Have a little clippy pose.
Yep.
And then we play like the end theme.
Yeah, so we're doing that?
No, we're not doing that.
Okay.
Hence I brought it up. Now, firstly, because this particular episode of The Young Ones doesn't have the Young Ones theme in it. It's got the spooky music because it's a Halloween-y type episode.
Yep.
Secondly, because I'm going to be putting clips throughout this whole podcast. And thirdly, because it gives me an opportunity to whip out Neil's heavy concept album and play the track Lentil Nightmare as a substitute for the Young Ones theme tune. Not the whole track, just a little sample.
Please come back after this, listeners.
Yeah, please come. No, come on. Do you remember anything about Lentil Nightmare, Steve?
Someone screaming Lentil Nightmare.
Well, it was Neil, for a start. Anyway, I think we should get into a little bit of Lentil Nightmare. Yes, indeed, Steve. So what about Lentil Nightmare, which you wouldn't have heard in 36 years?
Well, it was heavy.
Yeah.
And conceptual.
Yes.
So, it certainly fits with the title of the album.
Oh.
It's not one of my favourite tracks off the album, I have to admit.
As if you like atmospheric, metally, Sabbathy, Zeppelin-y sort of gear, it's brilliant, and the drumming is tremendous, and Nigel Planer's vocal range, he gets right up there, doesn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, I like the lyrics. Yeah, he's a pretty heavy guy, the Demon Lentil King.
I think I still prefer the hurdy-gurdy Mushroom Man.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Anyway, we're in the synopsis sort of area here. So the short synopsis is the young ones get a video and a vampire.
Oh, well done.
Yes.
Right, that's it. That's that done.
We're out of here. So the episode begins with a man playing chess against death with his big scythe. After losing to the man, Death declares bollocks to this and attacks the man with his scythe. Yes. We'll talk about that reference later on. So the horror...
I wonder what would have happened if Death had won. Yeah. Presumably he still would have... He's waded in with the scythe.
Broken the contract, Death did there. So there's a horror movie themed opening credits. And now when we get back from the credits, we've got Mike, Rick, Vyvyan and Neil carrying a coffin through a local cemetery. Technically Mike isn't carrying the coffin.
Three of them are carrying a coffin.
Yeah, but Mike's struggling so hard anyway he's got his hand up in the air, taking all the weight on his shoulder, but it's not actually touching the coffin. It's about a foot away from the coffin. Anyhow, they have a big conversation as they're doing this walk through the cemetery path and they're finding the grave hole. Now, this conversation is full of gags, so I'm going to put in a clip.
I thought maybe we should have some, floral tributes, but all I could find was this carrot. So I borrowed Rick's biro.
You rented it, Neil, you rented it, and you still haven't paid?
Yeah, and I wrote on it, sorry about everything being a bit of a bummer, what with you dying and everything. Still, things could have been worse. You could have been me and ended up having a really bad time all of the time. Signed, Neil.
That's very touching, Neil. When my hamster finds out you've nicked his carrot, he's going to kill you, Neil.
But what's SPGs? I didn't know he ate carrots.
He doesn't eat carrots, Neil. He sticks them down his underpants to impress the girls.
Right, now, a cool thing here, Steve, that I noticed, directorially speaking, is that Rick and Aid, Viv and Rick are at the back of the coffin procession.
Yep.
And because it's a front-on shot, you can't see them because they're obscured by Neil and Mike. And so what they do to get around this, so that if Viv's got a line, like, Neil, when my hamster finds out you've pinched his carrot, he's going to kill you.
Yep.
They do the we're struggling with the coffin palaver in such a way that they sort of stagger a bit to the left so that Viv's face is in shot, or stagger a bit to the right so that Rick's face is in shot. And it's quite inventive, and I just noticed that. I don't normally notice such things, but I wonder if they
couldn't afford more than, what have they got, one camera?
Well, probably.
Yeah.
And so they had to do this big long shot. I thought that was
very
pretty
good.
Nifty. They bring the coffin along to a freshly dug grave, where a passing woman who's very well dressed, a middle-aged, lovely cup of tea with the vicar sort of woman, she's strolling along with a dead body in a wheelbarrow, and she pulls up alongside Neil, who's holding this spade. And the brilliant line, "Oh, do you dig graves?" And he says, "Yeah, they're all right, yeah." This is one of the best lines in the whole episode. It's just, I love this.
That's a worry.
Anyway, did you recognise the actress, Steve?
Yeah, that lady does look familiar. Who is she?
Okay, so if you remember the Pertwee era Doctor Who story, The Demons, or The Daemons.
I never watched that one.
Oh, wow, no way.
It was never shown on TV, and I've never gone and found it on DVD.
All right, I'll lend you the DVD before you leave. She's a major character in that. She's
the witch, isn't
the
she?
White Witch of Devil's End. Olive Hawthorne. Anyhow, she's also in Filthy Rich and Catflap as the shopkeeper.
Okay.
So, she gets an instant BAFTA for that one. So, after that brilliant joke, they finally get to this whole drunken vicar thing turning up to do the burial. And it's Terry Jones. And he starts in his, after a drinky poo, of course, because he's a drunken vicar, he starts doing the traditional funeral ashes to ashes speech, which Rick hijacks to sing the David Bowie song, or as Neil would have it, David Bowie.
Because he's Australian.
The vicar headbutts Rick, who falls into the grave, and Viv immediately starts to fill the grave in, and Neil goes, "No, stop, Viv, you can't bury Rick alive." And he says, "You're absolutely right, Neil."
Yeah. Picks up the shovel.
We got to kill him. And whacks. We don't see it, of course, but he whacks Rick with the shovel. And it's just a nice little bit of young one's violence, a vicar headbutt, and this is what keeps the kids tuning in. Now, I should ask at this point, Steve, if you know the difference between a shovel and a spade, because the people at Wikipedia clearly don't.
Well, it's the shape of it, isn't it?
Yep. Well, we'll leave that one for the listener to digest.
Yes.
Sitcom Showdown, where we discuss the difference between shovels and spades.
Yep. You can find out all sorts of amazing information on this podcast.
Yeah. These two gravediggers, Steve, are Hale and Pace. Now, they rush in because they see Viv having sconned Rick with a shovely spade.
Yep.
And they think he's digging a grave, and, they don't like this because they're the ones who dig the graves.
Yep.
They go, "Oi, oi, oi, we dig the graves around here," and they demand to know what's going on because this is solely their province. And they go, "Right, two things. Firstly, has anyone told the Stiffy joke?"
Right.
Which, of course, Rick has. And secondly, what the hell is going on? And so that's when Viv says, "It's a long story," and they go into flashback wibbly-wobbly mode and go back to the very beginning of the tale, and things start off properly.
So are we ignoring the fact that if they're the only people that dig graves around here, they should know that they've dug that grave already?
It's a plot hole. Yeah.
First plot hole of the episode.
Woohoo! Yeah, well, quite.
plot holes you could drive a truck through.
Well, yeah. Right, so it's bath night, Steve, in the young one's house, and Neil jumps into this bath water after a discussion with Rick, because Neil's the last in line in the pecking order of the house, and everyone else has had their bath before him, and of course they can't afford more hot water. With the gag being that it's basically cold mud at this point, and he plops down into this mud.
I wondered if this was the inspiration if this conversation was the inspiration for the Wonder Stuff song, 30 Years in the Bathroom.
Ooh, could be.
Because there's a reference to Rick having spent almost 30 years in the bathroom.
Ah, Steve, you've pulled that one out of the hat.
There's no evidence for that whatsoever.
Oh, man. Yeah, so it's bath time, and in fact it's so beyond being a bit cloudy that Neil ends up finding his bike in there at one point. It's beautiful surrealism that he can hop into a bath and not know there's a bike in there. But it also ties back, Steve, to a track on Neil's album called My White Bicycle. Which we should play now. No, we won't. We cut downstairs to where Mike and Viv are setting up the new video machine. Oh, it's exciting. And now this is in order to watch a video nasty. Do you remember the name of this video nasty, Steve?
Yep, no, it's eluding me.
Okay, well, Sex with a Headless Corpse of the Virgin Astronaut.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I liked is that, Mike is holding this videotape. That's actually properly printed on the label. That's attention to detail. Oh. They crammed that whole title into the video label on the prop. Anyhow, they're nearly at the end of this setting up the video process, right? And Mike is reading from the instructions, and they're nearly ready for that golden moment when they start watching their very first video, but something's gone wrong. And we'll let the clip explain.
Your video is now ready for use. Insert cassette and press play. Happy viewing.
Ha ha ha! They wouldn't say that if they knew what video we've got. Right.
It must have gone wrong somewhere.
Oh, God.
Maybe you shouldn't have poured all that washing up liquid into it.
It says here, Michael, look. Ensure machine is clean and free from dust.
Yeah, but it doesn't say ensure the machine is full of washing up liquid.
Yeah, but it doesn't say ensure the machine isn't full of washing up liquid.
Well, it wouldn't, would it? I mean, it doesn't say ensure you don't chop up your video machine with an axe. Put all the bits in a plastic bag and bung them down the lavatory.
Doesn't it? Well, maybe that's where we're going wrong.
I think, put it down. That's worth £500.
Rick, meanwhile, Steve, is upstairs and he locks himself in his room and he's down for a sneaky read of Cosmopolitan, which he's fished out of his secret little floor space. And, he's probably locked the 3 locks on his door or something like that, so no one can interrupt him and his Cosmo time. So as soon as he settles in for a read on his bed, he nearly gets cut in half by Vyvyan's booby trap in Rick's bed, in which a circular saw fires up and starts ripping very fast towards Rick's ghoulies.
Yep.
And Rick springs off the bed and he's screaming. But then he takes revenge by boarding up Vyvyan in his room, although Rick actually doesn't realise Viv is actually downstairs with Mike. So that plan's never going to work. He also doesn't realise that Viv and Neil have swapped rooms, which will get revealed a bit later on. And he's actually boarded up Neil's room. Now this, I know we slagged off the plot, but this is an important plot point.
Yes. They've seeded it well.
Oh, they did. Rick has to now come downstairs to read his Cosmo. And Mike and Viv are, of course, crouched on the floor fiddling with a video.
Behind the sofa.
Behind the sofa. So he thinks he's alone in there, Rick does. And he sits down with his Cosmo. But Mike and Viv catch him. And Rick sees that Viv is, in fact, not upstairs in the room he thought he just boarded him into. And he starts yelling because his plan has failed and Vyvyan's free. And Viv explains that he wasn't going to his room tonight anyway because him and Mike are indulging in an all-night orgy of sex and violence. Rick at this point doesn't realise they're talking about the video nasties.
He's a bit worried about the carpet.
He soon gets the picture though, and so I think it's time for another clip.
But the carpet get awfully sticky.
It's a video nasty.
It's a carpet farty.
The only trouble is we can't get the bastard to work.
I'm not surprised if he's dead.
Not the astronaut, the video.
Oh, have we got a video?
Yes, we've got a video!
Wait a minute, where did you get it from?
Look, don't spread it around, all right, but I know this guy.
What, you borrowed it off him?
Yeah, more or less. There's a free offer down at the TV rental shop where you can get one on trial for the night.
Yeah, so I sort of slid down there and I had a word with the guy.
Slid back, got his birth certificate to prove his age.
Yeah, forged my signature. And Bob's your auntie's living lover.
Except that they've given us a dud!
Given us a dud. Give me this. Right. Vyvyan, this is for a toaster.
Now, Viv and Mike explain this plot point that they've got the video player on free trial for the night. They borrowed it from Harry the Bastard, who isn't a dodgy gangster, but he's just a bloke from Rumbelows. And the bloody video isn't working. And if they've broken it, they're going to owe Harry the Bastard 500 quid. And it's at this point Rick brilliantly points out that Viv's been reading the instruction manual for a toaster.
Yes, I like that one.
Yeah. And remember, Viv is the mechanical genius who has a special way with machines. If we remember the laundrette episode.
Yeah, well, they should have bribed the video with
psychology and extreme violence.
Felicity Kendall's underwear.
Yes, so there's a cutaway here, Steve-O. Two blokes in a cabin playing cards. Can you explain this cutaway?
No, I don't care to. I think it's rubbish.
Do you really? Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I'd rather be watching the young ones than watching the two blokes in a cabin. But it does have its own bits of genius. Anyway, that's Arden and Frost, and Steve doesn't like it, so we'll move on. Back at the house, the doorbell rings and it explodes the front door. Now, we love this sort of young ones-ish exploding stuff as kids.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so that's what kept us tuning in, as I said earlier. Now, the scene-stealing postman is now able to come in through the lack of a door, and he delivers a human-shaped package from the Transvaal. Now, this postman, while overacting and getting his audience flowers...
Is he supposed to be like Ollie Reed or something like that?
It must be, yeah. Again, when you're a kid, you don't get these references, but you don't care. It's breaking the fourth wall. All right, will do. So, but he does make the mistake, this postman, of asking Viv if they've got a video. And Viv says, if anybody else asks me that question, I'm going to put their head through the window. So that's more seeding of it's Chekhov's window head. Yeah, anyway, speaking of windows, Neil had fallen out of the bathroom window because he stood up in the bath and it's dark in there because of a conversation he and Rick had about saving electricity. But he landed safely and he has to now come in the non-existent front door. But because he was, only wearing a string vest, he has to hold a flower pot over his privates. So
he wasn't wearing only a string vest. He was wearing a shower cap.
Ah!
But it's funny because he doesn't actually put his hair under the shower cap. So he's just got the shower cap on top of his head and all of his long hairs hanging down practically into the mud of the bath.
I had not noticed. Nice eye for detail there. Well done. He
Yes, but he's wearing a pot.
Yeah, which he has to hold in place over his trouser furniture. And then him and Rick get into an argument and Neil gets very, very upset. And Viv's goading him on to smash Rick.
Yep.
And Rick's saying, come on, smash me. But Neil's a very peace-loving guy. And he just says, look, I'm not into violence, right? But I'm really going to smash your face in. And he raises this frying pan above his head with both hands.
Yep.
But the flower pot's staying in place, Steve.
Yeah. That broke the moment.
Yes. And Rick says, how are you holding that flower pot up? Anyway, but is this because the peace-loving Neil, when he finally succumbs to the urge for violence, that he gets turned on by violence?
No, because I think he comes around to himself and says, what am I doing?
Yeah. And he rushes back upstairs to put some proper clothes on. Yeah, that's another...
If he can find some.
Yeah, exactly. Because Neil's room has been boarded up. Neil can't get any clothes. Neil comes back downstairs wearing a dress, and it turns out that because he was locked out of his room, he went into Rick's cupboard, and the only thing he could find was that dress. And then cue Rick being very ashamed for being outed as a crossdresser and just denying it and denying it and denying it. But luckily, Neil is distracted by the mention of a video, which has blown his mind. And he asks Viv, do we have a video? And then what occurs?
Well, I assume this is the occasion where Viv marches over to the wall, rips the window
out of it,
including the sill and everything, out of the wall, and walks back over to Neil and just smashes him over the head with it.
Oh, and again, this is a cool directorial choice because they've set up the shot, and then
it's brilliantly done. That prop work. It's subverting your expectations because you expect him to kind of march Neil over to the window and put his head through like that.
Yeah. It's great. Where are we, Steve? Yes, so we do this cutaway to the prison ship headed to Australia. Now, I've put in my notes, I could live without it, but it does have Chris Barry from Red Dwarf in it. Do you feel the same way about this cutaway as you did about the cabin one?
In principle, but I think I prefer this one. It's got Ron Cook in it, and he is quite a good actor. He plays the head turnkey at the debtors' prison in Little Dorrit. He's very good in a dramatic role. And it's good to see him again here. So, yeah, him and Chris Barry. It's good, but yeah, again, I'll comment on this at the end.
Oh, okay, right.
Yep.
Anyway,
I think they link this one a bit better to what's going on because as they come out of the scene, they're showing you a poster or something like that for, is it an art gallery or something? It's got an exhibition of this painting and other things. So they kind of pull out of that. So there's some kind of a connection between.
No, I think you're right. This is all seeming just about right. So Neil shrugs all this off. And he discovers that the reason it's not working is because the idiots haven't actually plugged it in. So Neil goes to plug in the video recorder, but it's off by about an inch. And he goes, "Oh, have we got an extension lead?" But like, instead of moving the video player an inch towards the wall, Viv goes around the front and moves the entire wall. And this is another example of the sort of brilliant, impossible stuff that happens in the young ones that we just love. Vyvyan pushing an entire wall an inch closer to the video player. It's genius.
It's entirely consistent with going to fetch the window to put over someone's head.
I hadn't thought of that, but yes, you're right. And that must have disturbed the wiring, Steve-O, because when Neil finally plugs it in,
yes,
he gets electric shocked. And that causes the video player to work, and then we go to a sort of cutaway-ish, and that's the ad for Pain Away. And this is where we see Dawn French and Mrs. Miggins, who I never recognised as Mrs. Miggins.
Yeah, don't know what to say about this. It's not great. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point for the ladies in the audience. Yeah, as a kid, of course, it all went completely over my head.
Yep.
So I had no idea what they were satirising and what they were on about.
Yep.
So there you go. As an adult, of course, it's like, yep, fair enough.
She looks so young in that.
She really does. As does Mrs. Miggins.
Yep.
Yeah, so
True.
Helen Atkinson Wood, jolly well done. So they come back from the Pain Away advert, and the video stops working again. But right on cue, Steve, the package that was delivered earlier that we've forgotten all about in the kitchen has opened, and the contents of the person-shaped parcel turn out to be a vampire, played by Alexei Sayle, who claims he's really just a driving instructor from Johannesburg. But it's at this point, Rick exclaims, "Only pop music can save us now," and we get The Damned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good track.
They wrote it for the show.
Did they really? What I enjoyed most of all, I mean, there's a brilliant chase scene of the vampire chasing them around as we're seeing the Damned perform, which is great. I love Captain Sensible. He's so cool. Do you remember his song, What?
No.
We should do a cutaway to that.
Hang on, so Captain Sensible, he's
the guitarist.
Right. Okay.
One of the guitarists, because they've got a brilliant 2-guitar setup, the Damned. Captain Sensible's the bloke with the beret, who's not very sensible.
Yeah.
Well, I woke up this morning, I was feeling fine, but this cat starts banging, man, what a swine. So I called reception, but to no avail. That's why I'm telling you this sorry tale. It went bang, I said shut up. It went bang, I said wrap up. Well, I'm aware that the guy must do his work, but the part of a man drove me berserk. He said, "Captain," I said, "What?" He said, "Captain," I said, "What?"
Said Captain, said what? He said Captain, said what you want.
Would you call this pop music, though?
Oh, I would. The Damned might have a certain image that isn't pop, but I'd say it's a catchy pop tune.
They weren't like an early goth kind of a thing.
They fall into a strange, I don't know. We need a music expert to tell us what their thoughts on this are. But I think, they've got a certain image, but the music is definitely poppy and upbeat and rocky and catchy choruses and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Where were we? Oh, yes. Anyway, so the vampire's chasing them around.
Yep.
They're doing that. And I always think these moments in the young ones are very Goodies-esque. Because, of course, the Goodies would have their moments in every episode where they go to a song and the three lads are running around doing their slapstick comedy. So this is sort of a similar deal. That's why it appeals to me. So the Damned are singing Video Nasty, which is a great track. And the vampire's chasing the guys around, and he stops them to ask where the toilet is. So while the vampire's in the toilet, the boys lock him in there. And that means they've bought themselves some time to come up with a plan to save themselves from the vampire who's going to bite them all.
Yep.
So they're in fear for their lives. There's a vampire which was loose in the house that's now in the toilet. And what I like is there's that bit where they cut back to the bathroom and the vampire's shaving. But of course there's nothing in the mirror.
Yep.
And I thought that's so cool because that would have taken hours and hours and hours and hours to set up the effects and do all the stuff. And it's on the screen for probably 1.5 seconds.
Yep.
And you just think, wow.
Yeah, you've got to appreciate the effort they went to.
Yeah.
So much easier for the What We Do in the Shadows people.
Yes. Right. Anyway, so the song is over and the vampire is trying to get the lads to let him out of the bathroom by trying to trick them into thinking he's a harmless driving instructor from Johannesburg. He's not a vampire. It's all been a misunderstanding, Steve. Now, this ruse fails when he incorrectly answers Vyvyan's highway code questions. Would you agree if I was to say this is a highlight of the episode?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It is good. Let's have a clip.
What's the answer that he fails on? Oh, we're about to hear it in a clip, are we?
It's
Yes.
yeah. So let's clip it.
What should you never do in a box junction?
In a box junction, you should never enter it unless your exit is clear.
Ah, true. Okay. What's the procedure for the approach of a humpback bridge?
Approaching a humpback bridge, you should slow down and check in both rear view mirrors. If nobody is behind you, you should nip out a virgin's throat and...
Gotcha! Driving instructor on bottom! You're a vampire and there's no denying it!
Somewhere around this point, Steve, we get the pot noodle thing with Alexei Sayle breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience. He does this little set on how he's a Marxist comedian and he wants to assure all his comrades that by being on TV he is not sold out. And he goes, anyway, round about now I like to have a pot noodle. And he starts selling that. And again, this is the sort of thing that went over my head as a young child.
Yep.
But now, watching it again over the last few days, I quite appreciated it. I didn't think it was uproariously hilarious or anything, but I thought it wasn't too bad. And
why does he blow into the pot noodle?
Well, he doesn't even sniff it; he blows it. And that sends him back into his vampire rage, which brings us back into the story.
But he clearly does it deliberately. So
yeah,
I don't know. Why do I question anything that happens in the young ones?
Well, this is the second of two, what I'm going to assume are cocaine references. So he goes, ooh, this looks absolutely umptious. Let's try some, shall we? Holds the spoon up to his nose, and you think he's going to sniff it. But then, as you say, he goes and blows into it, and it goes in his face. So he's got hot pot noodle all over his face, and he flies into a rage. Yeah, okay.
As you do.
Yeah, someone must have interviewed Alexei Sayle about this. I don't know. Anyhow, this is where the boys realise their time is going to be up because the vampire's going to come bursting through the door at any minute and they're all going to be screwed. And then someone points out the vampires only attack virgins. And it leads them all to unconvincingly deny their obvious sexual purity. But luckily, it's too late for that sort of stuff and the vampire's on his way downstairs.
Yeah.
So in an effort to escape, luckily the boys try to go out the window and a beam of sunlight comes through and it sort of hits the vampire, who didn't know it was nearly daylight because his wristwatch is set to South African time because he's from Johannesburg. Yeah, and so he starts, the vampire Alexei starts flipping out and rolling around and dying. They didn't have effects for a face melting or anything, and falls onto the sofa. And they fold him up in the Habitat sofa coffin.
So we're not going to mention their attempt to drive a stake through his heart.
I've got it! Peter Cushing! We're going to drive a stake through his heart!
Great! I'll get the car!
Oh no, we haven't got a steak.
All we've got is this vegetarian sausage.
Right, I've got the car! Where's the stake?
And this is some very innocent, beautiful, punny wordplay with drive and steak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't have glossed over that. You're quite right, because it's a nifty bit.
Yeah, I think it's good. Plus there's more destruction, so... And you get to see Viv's car.
Oh, yes,
which is
the Ford
awesome.
Anglia.
Yeah.
With the flames down the side.
Yep.
So they shoved the vampire into the sofa coffin. Now, this is where we flash forward back to where we started in the graveyard. And Mike realises it's 9:30, and that's the cut-off point, Steve, to return the video.
Yep.
And that means they're going to owe Harry the Bastard 500 quid. But then, out of the coffin bursts the vampire, who reveals himself to, in fact, be Harry the Bastard. And he does confirm their deadline has passed. They owe him 500 quid in late fees. And for the closing line of the episode, the entire gang all turn to the camera and say, well, what a complete bastard. And the closing credits play over Death and the Man again, except now they're doing golf. What a fun thing.
There's got to be easier ways to make 500 quid than having yourself dressed as a vampire, wrapped up in brown paper, tied up with string, stamps put all over you.
Yes.
Dropped off at someone's front door, and then spending the whole night doing whatever he did.
Yeah, I agree. That's another plot hole, isn't it? It's not so much a hole as it's unlikely. Right, okay, so we've reached the end of the synopsis. Thank goodness. And we can start talking about gags and other things we like and reasons why this is a genius classic of sitcom brilliance.
Yes.
Or not.
We could do that. It's certainly an option.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I like the bit where Neil is in the bath and we discover that the water is just brown mud. He says, "It's a bit cloudy, Rick."
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. They're reading off the manual for the video, and it says to ensure the machine is clean and free from dust, so Viv pours washing up liquid into it.
The instructions don't say don't.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
is this? That's really good. And then when we cut back to Neil after that, he's singing. Rick's doing the whole turn the lights thing off on him, and he starts singing Sounds of Silence on the guitar in the bath.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
That's it. Well done, Jeff. We get to see Rick's bed at one point, and it's got these teddy bears on it.
Oh, has it?
This pillow is just disgusting. It's
Oh,
got
really?
These yellow stains on it. I thought it might have been snot left over from the...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but that was quite green, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In the sick episode.
But, as it dried, it might have gone yellow.
Maybe. Oh, the telephone ringing is a good one. Because they're standing or sitting about
Doing nothing.
3 meters from the phone. Yet they quite happy for it to ring for 10 minutes and just keep shouting out, Neil, get the phone. That's always really good. Oh, Rick saying, "Oh, touche, Vyvyan, what devastating repartee. Talk about Oscar Wilde."
Yeah, and Neil does.
And he does, yeah. Neil says, "Flares are coming back in. I read it in my horoscope."
It's so Neil.
And a Viv quote, "Oh no, the front door's exploded. I was worried I wouldn't hear the doorbell, so I thought I'd pep it up a bit."
Oh, man.
That's very good. They must be thinking at some point that the package which is being delivered could be hard drugs. We know it's from the Transvaal in South Africa. And Viv said something like, "Fragile is probably Transvaalian for very hard drugs."
Yeah.
I like that. Good translation joke. And then a bit later on, when the vampire appears, they say, "Should we call the police?"
No. It's obviously by Rick wearing a dress. They think this is deviant behaviour. And Neil says, "I think we should call the pigs."
Yep.
And Mike...
And Mike says, "No, you can't do that. If the police come round here, they'll grab our nasties."
Yeah.
I'm talking about the videos.
Nasties. We didn't even talk about what a video nasty was.
Yes. Will people even know?
But it was a whole thing, and it led to certain movies being banned, and they created some sort of thing similar to when they created the comics code in America in the 50s to deal with all the comics getting out of control. So just rewinding, Steve, to Neil and the bath, and he slides into the mud, which is obviously going to make him dirtier than he was when he didn't have a bath, and he falls out the window and comes in. And Mike says, "Go and have a bath, Neil, you're filthy." And Neil goes, "I just had one." He goes, "It's amazing how dirty you can get in this house just answering the phone." To which Rick quips, "It was probably a dirty phone call." And his delivery's so crap, but the gag's actually quite good.
Yeah, he's constantly coming out with these jokes in this episode and getting absolutely slammed for it.
Yeah, because
here's
his
another one,
delivery's
Jeff.
so crap.
They talk about the Battersea Dogs Home, and he says, "Maybe it was the Dogsea Bats Home."
Yes.
And they slam him for that one as well. And then the last one I've got in my list is they say, "This is actually very serious," and then they all pull this very serious face at the camera.
Speaking of that little scene, when they lock the vampire in the toilet, Viv goes, "I've got a crucifix and I'm not afraid to use it." And Neil follows up with, "Yeah, Vamp, you're messing with the big boys now." And after that whole runaround scene, Rick asks Neil,
"What does that mean?
What exactly does messing with the big boys entail?" And
Neil
squirts him with some water in a very weak fashion. And it's
really terrifying.
So do you want to talk about the snogging with SPG or not particularly?
No.
Well, Viv's saying, "I can't be a virgin," and he says, "I hope snogging with SPG counts." Yeah.
He snogged his own hamster. I guess not that snogging your own hamster makes any difference.
No.
Snogging a hamster.
So if you'd never watched The Young Ones before and you just watched this episode, you know that SPG is a hamster. You get to see him with the stars in his forehead and the mohawk, just like Viv.
He's
you
a
know
punk,
that
punk hamster.
He's a punk hamster who's been snogging with Viv and sticks carrots down his underpants to impress the girls. So all this character development for a SPG. Yeah.
SPG makes an appearance in Bambi as well, doesn't he?
He throws the toilet roll from the audience and says, "Ooh, I up scumbag, up scumbag." SPG. I just got another comment on Christopher Ryan. They've been doing a lot of running around in the show, and so he does the Peter Davison Doctor Who thing, which is making sure that when the director shouts go, that he's doing all the heavy breathing to indicate he's been running and all this. And it's these little touches that Christopher Ryan is doing that outclasses the rest of the cast. And it's just the little things you notice that make you take Mike seriously, and that adds to the whole thing. I think that's really, really cool.
I've never noticed that.
Right, so Viv at one point says, "Oh God, I've got to stop sniffing this Ajax," because he had a bit of brain fog, and I just thought,
it's impairing his mental function.
Yeah, that's not what you want to hear from your potential soon-to-be your doctor, because he's a medical student.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's pretty sharp. I mean, deranged, but
yeah,
he's usually pretty switched on.
Mike also delivers a line that we love in this house and has been used for years. So someone suggested something stupid, and Mike immediately does his authority thing and says, "Look, I don't like to say anything negative, but no."
Puts them in their place.
Yeah. Again, it's all in the delivery, but you don't get more negative than no.
No.
Now, the video, Steve, was 500 quid, a very precise sum, and you know very well, and you're dreading that it's time for a round of What's It Worth, where we convert what stuff was worth back in the past to find out how much it's worth today.
All right, go ahead.
So 500 quid in 1984.
In Thatcher's Britain.
In Thatcher's Britain. You could buy a squillion pints of beer. So if you had to do a quick back-of-the-envelope calculation, how much do you reckon that would be worth in British pounds and thus Australian dollary-doos today?
What, 2.5, 3 grand?
Yeah, 1,700 quid.
Huh.
Which is about 34, let's round it up to $3,500 dollary-doos.
Yep.
So
wow.
Imagine if a video player costs $3,500
That's
today.
insane. Loads, dude.
I love a round of What's It Worth now. Shall we sum up? Because we've been going for an awfully long time.
Yeah, sure.
Before I launch into my little speech here, have you got any last comments on this episode or fond remembrances of the young ones?
I mean, I watch it and I'm immediately back in my childhood, loving the gags and everything like that. But as someone who's now watched many, many sitcoms, I can't help but notice that it's pretty loose.
Oh,
like,
really?
Doesn't it go for 35 minutes or something like that? And there's all this stuff in there that they could have cut out and made it way better. Like those couple of those scenes that we talked about.
The cutaways?
Yeah. Ditch those.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, would it be the younger ones without the music? Like The Damned and things like that?
There's some that you could, you could cut out Amazulu in that episode. But I wouldn't want to cut out the Ace of Spades.
Yeah, Motorhead would have to stay in, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then they're obviously obsessed with Monty Python because they're not only throwing those bits in, but then they've got these flashes of, what do? They put just flash a thing up onto the screen for a few seconds, so you barely glimpse it and it's gone again.
Like the subliminal.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
It is what it is.
Well, I think this is, part of what makes it what it is. But just to put it in context, though, Steve, so also playing in the same year, right? Now, imagine this. You've got, I've written down a few sitcoms. So there was A Fine Romance, Never the Twain, Just Good Friends, Heidi High, and then it's not a case of Along Comes the Young Ones, because this is series 2.
Yep.
But it's just so unbelievably different to what was the standard sitcom fare.
It's quite the contrast.
At the time. Now, also around the same time, we had Chance in a Million, which is still very traditional sitcom based, but it's also quite different. How we feel about Chance in a Million. So the crux of my argument about the young ones, even though we don't need to, because it's only a Halloween episode, is that it does everything. Like, they literally use every technique in the book. So you've got these brilliantly observed characters, I think with a possible exception of Vyvyan, because I don't think you could have observed anyone like him in real life. That's just pure anarchic inventiveness. And so you've got all the great characters mixed with surrealism and goon show-like feats of impossibility. You got breaking the fourth wall, and you got flat-out weirdness of more modern stuff like Vic and Bob's sitcom that we looked at, House of Fools, borrows heavily from some of the young ones' influences. And it's got all those cutaways decades before Family Guy made them a staple. In addition to just innocent wordplay, dialogue-free, slapstick action humour, goody style. But what they do is they take every type of comedy there is and they cram it into this show, incredibly fast-paced. And like I say, it wasn't the first show to do all these things, but it was the way it combined them. And you compare that to what else was happening at the time. It was totally ahead of the game, dude. It ended up being really influential. And I found something recently which I quite liked, and it was that Rick used to say it was also a family sitcom with Mike as the dad, Neil as the mum, and Rick and Viv as the squabbling children.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I like that perspective, and if you take that on board, it's just another reason to say the young ones literally did everything sitcom, and they did it all well. I think it can be summed up by the opening, which is it opens with this highbrow film buff tribute sequence to the 1957 film The Seventh Seal, with death and playing chess and all that gear. But a minute later, we've got Hale and Pace asking about the Stiffy joke and breaking the fourth wall while Terry Jones from Monty Python looks on. And it's amazing, and that's the opening minutes, and that's before it gets really good.
Yep.
So what a show. I mean, yeah, I think it should be on everyone's Halloweeny watching list.
Yep, I agree. They certainly threw everything at the wall, gave it all they got. You've got to appreciate the energy.
Yeah. Jolly good.
Well done, Jeff. Halloween's done for another year.
Yeah, exactly, which means it's your turn next time, Steve. Have you made any choices?
I've got a few thoughts, but I'm not gonna share what they are at the moment.
So it's our traditional end of episode conversation, in which I pointlessly ask you what's coming up next time, and
I avoid the question.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, well, it was nice to get together again and do another episode, and hopefully we'll crank one out in November and then crank out a Christmas episode.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, we'll sign off now, listeners. We hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you in about a month. Bye.
See ya. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.